Hello everyone and welcome to the round 1 preview live stream. Merry TLT-mas. It is finally here. TLT is here. All the planning, all the research, and it gets blown up by TLT. No, TLT actually wasn't as bad as I expected. There was fairly standard team list, I think, for most teams, so nothing too crazy. Unlucky any Greg Marzu owners out there because he just all of a sudden disappeared. Barry 2 is coming out on Twitter saying that he's been overlooked for Heimel Hunt. So, yeah, Marzu is probably not an option at this case. But very strangely, I don't think he was actually named in Reggie's or NRL Cup. So he could be injured potentially. But look, I don't think you can probably start with someone like Greg Marzu. But thank you all for joining me. As always, please let me know if there's any issues with the stream, my voice. I know last time there was a couple of laggy issues. Hopefully we avoid all of that this stream. I want to have it be as smooth as possible because I'm sure you guys have got heaps and heaps of questions coming in this stream. But just quickly want to say shout out to James, Ian, Tyler, CD Lamb, Alaric, Tums, Jerry Rocks, Isaac, That Fat Guy, my favorite probably YouTube name ever, Graham Gale, Jonty. Thank you all for joining me, and everyone in the chat as well. Do give the stream a like as well throughout if you are enjoying it. So much to uncover, I think, for round 1. I've already dropped a Cheapy video about little less than an hour ago, so a lot of the questions you have around cheapies, obviously after the stream, definitely would recommend going and watching that, but we'll still obviously cover cheapies as well in the stream. But it's a busy few days. We're going to do the stream, we've done the cheapy video. After this, I'm going to edit my buy planning video, so hopefully come out midday tomorrow. I'll come back from work tomorrow and I'll do my final team video. I'll do a live stream on Thursday for the lockout. Lots happening, but this is the time to do all the content. But no, thank you all for joining me as well. Appreciate there's going to be lots of pods coming out tonight and tomorrow. So I appreciate that you all coming and hanging with me and talking some Supercoach. So I think I'm seeing a few questions starting to come in. A lot around Jackson Ford, Bryce Cartwright, or Matt Dury. I think that's maybe a decent place to start. Is just around the cheapy 2RS because I think that probably was one of the parts of TLT where, yeah, there was a few talking points. So I'll quickly head over to a slide that I prepared. On this, I've got a slide prepared for that. So cheapies 2RF. So you'll hear my more kind of detailed thoughts in the cheapy video, which I definitely, obviously I recommend watching. So yeah, I think the question of Cartwright versus Dury, what I summarized basically in that video was like Cartwright's the fun pick with the the former gun, the attacking upside, the former gun, all that kind of good stuff. Dury's probably a more, I guess you can call him a plotter, more boring pick, but my general summary was that I'd prefer Dury over Bryce Cartwright. I think it's just because that in the trial game 2, Sean Lane and Dury were the starting edges. I just assumed that Dury was named as the starting right edge, I believe, second row forward, along with Sean Lane. Bryce Cartwright has now come in, given that Sean Lane's picked up that injury. Sean Lane will be back in about 4 to 6 weeks, I believe, is the prognosis. So, like, my feeling is that when he comes back, Cartwright is the one who's going to drop. I think Cartwright was especially good last season for the Eels when he was coming off the bench at times. I feel like that might be the role going forward for him. And they'll keep that right edge spot as maybe a bigger minute player like what they had in IPAP, maybe similar with Dury, who's just going to be more of a safe kind of pair of hands. So I personally think that Dury is much more secure longer term for minutes wise. I do think it's also beneficial that if he is playing on the right edge, he's got Mitchell Moses playing next to him, so I think that's going to help. I believe he scored a try actually in the trials game 2, Matt Dury. So, I think the safer pick for me is Dury. The more exciting pick is Cartwright. But I think you'll have to just understand that with Cartwright, the amount of cash you might generate might be restricted because if Sean Lane comes back around 6 and then Cartwright goes to the bench, that's kind of it, I guess, for Cartwright's growth potential. Whereas Dury, he might maybe not rise as fast in cash, but I think he's got more overall cash potential. So that's my feeling generally on Dury versus Cartwright. Dury's in my current draft, but Cartwright isn't. There's maybe an argument that you run both of them, but I don't know. I feel like Cartwright could just be a bit of a feel good. It's kind of my head says Dury and my heart says Cartwright kind of thing. But I think Dury for me would be the safer option. And I had another question on Jackson Ford. So yeah, lots of questions coming in on Jackson Ford. So he got the starting gig over Josh Curran, which was a bit surprising to me. I thought Curran would get the start. I just spoke to Anton a couple of days ago, and he spoke. So Anton Posel, for anyone who doesn't know, massive Warriors fan. He's kind of been my go-to source, or not source, but just kind of my source of information and opinion on Warriors, especially on the forwards. It's such a it's so up in the air with the Warriors forwards. I see George Skouras has a question about Nikora. Nikora, I think 5 question marks. So Jackson Ford, he says, he thinks he'll play around 55 to 60 minutes on an edge spot, which at 280k is probably fine. You might get base stats of about 30. I don't really remember Ford being a massive Supercoach option in the past, so I'm actually just going to quickly have a look at his stats because you know me, I always go to the stats first things first. Like I'm looking at some of his previous seasons, 43, 41, 35, and then a 33 average. Granted, a lot of those games are him playing bench minutes. There's not really a good sample size of games where he's played decent minutes to, I think, kind of rely upon. So it is a bit more of the shot in the dark with Jackson Ford. Like I found in 2021 a 3-game sample size where when he's playing at lock, so this is when he's playing in the middle. So he played 59 minutes, 60 minutes, and 67 minutes. He had scores of 60, 67, 51, no attacking stats. Like those games had base of 50, 59, and 46. So clearly, I think when he plays in the middle, he's definitely got a decent work rate, where I think his PPM looks about 1.0. On an edge, it's probably going to reduce. So if you think he gets 55, 60 minutes, that might suggest maybe a drop off, let's call it to 0.8, 0.85. We're looking at maybe a 40 to 45 average, which look, at his price is still going to make money. So I think he's an option for sure. I personally would just, if possible, I would try to run maybe Trent Loiero instead. He's 365k, so he's about 70k over, 70, 80k more expensive than Ford. Just having Loiero means that you can always trade down to Jackson Ford once you have a good idea of minutes. So maybe that's something to think about. I don't personally think I'm going to be starting with Ford. Definitely an option, but I think because of the whole Nicho Hynes issue, which we'll definitely talk about in this stream as well, you've got a bit more money, I think, to kind of play with if you don't start with Nicho. So I think you can kind of afford to, kind of upgrade some of those depth spots. Just on Nikora as well, to answer your question, George, I'm fairly keen on him. Bit of a risk, I think, in that, again, minutes is a bit of an issue and a bit of up in the air. But like Anton thinks he's pretty confident he plays big minutes, like we're talking 70 to 80, both on an edge, spending some time in the middle. I think him at 411k, when he's previously played at Parramatta, has mainly been used as like a bench option, and sometimes also playing a bit of edge, but also playing a bit of center. So it's kind of impacted, I guess, his ability to actually consistently get good scores playing as a starting edge back rower. But like I'm looking at some of his scores as well, where he played 80 minutes as a center. Base stats of about 30. This is from 2021 on Nikora. 38, 41, 40, 31, 31 again, 28. So this is playing at center. So if you think he's going to play, let's say it gets bumped up 5 points conservatively if he's playing at second row forward. So you're thinking that his floor is probably going to be around 35, 40. I'd expect it maybe goes up to 45, maybe some attacking stats. Like, I can kind of see him being someone who gets around that 50 to 55, which I think at his price is solid. So, yeah, I like Nikora. I think at his price, he's very low owned at the moment as well. I think he's below like 5%. I've got a section as well on who is the best mid-range second row forward because there's so many to think about. I think there's definitely, it's okay to wait and watch as well because of the uncertainty about minutes, but I don't mind also starting with Nikora. I'd probably start with him over, say, Jackson Ford. Obviously, price is a little bit different, but it seems as though he's going to play more minutes than Jackson Ford is. All right, we'll say hello to a few more people as well. We've got Gazaraki. What up? What up, Gazaraki? Moz says, are we running with Isaac Thompson? Yep, so I can see up. Is that sorry, you're going to have to excuse me, up. I don't know if that's a shark or if that's a dolphin. So I don't know if it's up dolphins or up Cronulla Sharks. I'm sorry. We'll call you just up for now. Your question was like, you've only got one premium center wing. Is this okay? I think the crop of center wing cheapies is actually much better than what I thought it was as well. George, again, I can see a question, CNK or Isaac Thompson. Definitely recommend watching my cheapy video after the stream. I go actually into that 50-50 into quite a bit of detail. I actually am struggling with that 50-50 myself. Moz might be able to actually help me out because I know he's a Rabbitohs fan. Like, I'd be keen to see what you think, Moz, because my feeling is, speaking to a few Rabbitohs fans or seeing their opinions, is that Isaac Thompson should be playing over Taane Milne, even if Taane Milne returns from suspension. It's kind of a bigger body, kind of will help them, I think, with the runs out of the backfield. So hopefully the base stats are good and kind of gives them what maybe they don't quite get from an Alex Johnston. Taane Milne probably doesn't, again, He's probably a little bit better than Alex Johnson for kick returns base stats wise, but probably not as good as maybe like Isaac Thompson. Isaac Thompson, the 2 games he played last year, he averaged 64, had a try in each game, which, like, George, my general summary was that I'm okay with going with Thompson because I feel like he's just playing in a better attacking team. I know the draw is tough for the Rabbitohs, but I do think the Rabbitohs will still score points, even in these tough games. They might not win as many games, but they'll still score points. So Thompson, I think, will just have a better chance of actually scoring attacking stats, especially being a winger. Nicho Hynes, I think I view him as kind of a solid 45-50. Isaac Thompson, I kind of see him being maybe a 35 to 65. So I think the range of his scores is a little bit wider, but I think he's got more chances of hitting that 60-65 than maybe a Nicho Hynes would. So for me, I'm slightly still leaning towards Isaac Thompson, but it's really a 50-50. So Tupura has another question about centres. In my remaining centre wing playing spot, who would I play in round 1? Warbrick or Nicho Hynes or Khan Pereira? So I wouldn't mind playing Khan Pereira. He's got the Tigers, which is obviously probably a good matchup attacking stats wise. Melbourne have Parramatta, which is a team that they historically struggle against, playing away from home too. So I think and then Warriors have Newcastle at home. That's a tricky one. It'd be between Nicho Hynes and Khan Pereira. I'd probably take Khan Pereira, to be honest. I think I thought there were good signs from the Titans attack, again, albeit against the Dolphins. But even the Tigers, I think, should still concede points. So I'd probably just about lean Khan Pereira. But yeah, in terms of just quickly covering off, I guess, other things on the centre wing cheapies. For me, like, those 4 bottom ones that I've highlighted, so Alamotti, Warbrick, Khan Pereira and Taruva, all basically locked into my team. I will note a quick risk with Khan Pereira is that Brian Kelly is due to return from a suspension in round 3. There is potential that he takes Khan Pereira's spot with, he takes back his left centre spot, and then Philip Sammy goes back to the wing. I'm still okay with Khan Pereira because I think that at bottom dollar, there's lower risk, but also I generally think he's a better option than Sammy on the wing. And I hope that he would be included, he would stay in the team. And Alec, to answer your question, my list is missing Braden Williami, I should say. Yes, that's something I forgot to include in my centre wing video, which I'm a bit filthy about because I realised after I completely missed him. But I guess I'll give you some of my thoughts on Williami. Well, some of my thoughts. I actually I reached out to Anton again, my Warriors source of information. So I thought that Williami would be a bit of a risk because Viliami Valia was named on the extended bench and he played at centre last season for the Warriors. I thought that he would maybe come in for Williami potentially soon. So he thinks that Valia is actually more likely to come in for Adam Pompey. He says that Williami and Montoya play left and have an existing combination from the Fiji team of 2019. And he says he's potentially a good one to trade down to. So I think what he's suggesting is that he looks like he's probably first choice and he's got first crack at it, but doesn't sound like he's starting with him. Now I won't speak for Anton, but it sounds like he's not starting with him. Again, maybe it's a wait and watch that you trade down to in a few weeks. I think we've got enough certainty with some other cheapies like Alamotti, Warbrick, Khan Pereira, Taruva, even someone like Tommy Talau I think is more likely to hold his position than someone like Braden Williami. So I think there's enough kind of cheaper options above his price that you can just stick with, that maybe you can trade down to him in a few rounds time. So that's my thoughts on Braden Williami. But yes, you're right. I probably should have included him in this list. I'll probably add a little asterisk in my cheapy video that I'll refer back to the stream for my thoughts on him. But yeah, I guess in terms of the other centre wing cheapies, haven't got Tommy Talau. I think he'll be solid, but I'm happy to not go with him for this point. I would rather probably take one of Thompson or Nicho Hynes over him, and then those other 4 centre wings feel pretty comfortable for me. And then I've already got Val Holmes and Brian To'o, so that's my kind of 7 centre wing makeup. I realised I didn't really answer that person's question about having only one premium centre wing. Is this okay? I think it's okay because we've got a good crop of centre wing cheapies and middies, I think. Okay, so I've seen a question about thoughts on Corey Hawiranara lock. Yep, so I've got a section on the mid-range 2RS, which we can get to on as well. So just let me know if there's any other questions around the centre wing cheapies, then I'm happy to move on to another section. It's probably going to be easiest if you have questions related to a specific section, then to address it at that time. It just makes it flow a bit easier. But yep, just on Isaac Thompson, so Moz says he thinks it's his spot to lose. As long as he's doing his job well, Tiny Milne and his streaky discipline will probably keep him out. Yeah, I had similar thoughts on Milne, just in terms of that kind of suspension history and risk. Maybe they just stick with a more solid, sensible Isaac Thompson. And Moz asks, are you dropping your squad this stream out of curiosity? Yeah, I'll quickly go through what my team is probably at the end of the stream, just like in its current draft. But I still do need to do a lot of thinking, and so I'll definitely show a draft at the end of the stream. What I will do probably though is tomorrow just put out another video, probably not too long, 10-15 minutes max I reckon, just on my kind of final thoughts on the team. And then we'll do another stream on Thursday to kind of round out any final decisions. But I'm hoping that by Thursday, the Thursday stream, I've kind of settled on a team. Cool. Okay, maybe we can move on from this section, but we can obviously go back to it at some stage. So mid-range 2RF might be worth having a quick chat about. Sorry, maybe let's answer this question from Steez is saying, going off TLT, isn't Toto staying on the right? Yes, so I said that in the Cheapy video that based on the number, Taruva is on the left, but I think we find a lot as well, especially recently, the numbers sometimes don't matter with some of the players nowadays. Like coaches just say name him in whatever 13. Like Toe Harris, for example, I think he always gets named at 13, but he still plays a lot of time on the edge, but also in the middle. So yeah. So I still think that without Kickout this year, Panthers are more likely to be a bit more balanced with their attack. So I think even if Taruva's on the right, To'o's on the left, or vice versa, I still think they're both going to be good options. But just to answer, or just to kind of, I guess, kick off the discussion around mid-range 2RS, we've already had a bit of a chat about Murata Nyakura. Someone asked about Corey Haruanara. So yep, got named the number 13 spot for the Raiders. I don't think I can go with Corey. Just I hate Ricky Roulette with forwards. Apart from Tarpany, I don't think I'm going to be going near any Raiders forwards. Like, CHN has got the game for Supercoach, like he offloads, he breaks tackles, all that kind of stuff, but I don't know, it's just minutes and rotation. He always finds a way to somehow get back to the bench under Ricky. I don't know. I think for me, I've been not burnt, but like even the draw, for example, like yes, Dolphins round 2 is good, Newcastle round 4 is good, but there's a few tougher games, and it's hard to get a read of the Raiders overall. So yeah, for me, just with Ricky's minutes, Ricky Roulette, I don't think CHN is probably in the top 3 kind of mid-range 2RS personally. Toolpro, I see your question on captains and vice captains. Definitely a section on captains and vice captains. We'll definitely get onto that a little bit later in the stream. Moz says, I think Eli Katoa, Wilton and Egan Butcher are the best mid-rangers. Yeah, I think this is really a position that's up in the air. So Egan Butcher, like I think with the Dolphins matchup, with unfortunately what's happening with Angus Crichton, I think it looks like Egan Butcher's going to get pretty extended run, like maybe 10-something games on the edge for the Roosters. So yeah, I think he's a good option. He's probably better than Nat Butcher, just when you take into account the big price saving, but also the fact that I think he's got a slightly better work rate. Like he's had games last season where he scored like 40 base in 38 minutes, playing in the middle, granted, but on an edge. Like, you know, Angus Crichton, for example, still has a very good work rate. I think Egan Butcher can kind of replicate that. So I think Egan is a good mid-range 2RF. I think, yeah, he probably would be in my top 3 as well. Wilton is probably in the top 3, I'd say, as well. For me, Wilton, Wade Graham's still named on the bench, so that's obviously an issue. No Nicho Hynes for round 1. That's been confirmed based on the TLT. Another thing with the Sharks as well, from memory, their bench was quite big. Like I think they had a 4-forward bench. Let me just have a quick look-see here. So their bench was Cameron McInnes, Wade Graham, Oregon Kaufusi, and Jack Williams. So yeah, quite a big bench there. So Graham would probably come on for Teague Wilton on the edge. McInnes will come in and play a bit of lock, maybe a bit of dummy half. Kaufusi and Jack Williams, I guess, will play in the middle. But yeah, so obviously Wilton, don't expect him to be playing the full 80 minutes, maybe something about 60, 65. I still think Wilton in 65 minutes can be okay. We'd rather him play 80. Personally, I haven't yet got him in the team. Round 6 bye is probably not ideal, but I'm looking at rounds 3, 4, 5 when they've got Raiders, Dragons and Warriors. They could be really good games where Wilton scores a few tries, because he does like scoring tries as well. So I think there's enough evidence of Wilton being a better long-term option for the Sharks that I think it's fine to take a punt on him. And the benefit with him is he's also one of the more expensive mid-range 2RFs. If it doesn't work out, it's not looking good, you've got that ability to trade down to basically any of these guys. So that's another thing that's good with Wilton. And the third one you said is Katoa. For me, it's kind of a coin flip between Katoa and Niokora. I think with Katoa, I didn't see Tarek Sims in the squad, I believe, for the Melbourne Storm. I'm just going to have a quick look at that. Yeah, so Tarek Sims hasn't been named at all in the entire squad. I'm not sure what the latest is in terms of injury front, but maybe he's a risk coming back in for minutes to someone like Katoa or Liero. It's a tough one between the two of them. I think at the moment Katoa's, he's much higher owned than Niokora. There's not really much to split them either. Okay, thanks Matthew. You're saying Tarek Sims back round 2 on the casualty ward. Yeah, the Storm signing Tarek Sims and then him not maybe getting at least on the bench, if not starting, does sound a bit surprising. So maybe there's enough doubt that you just don't go to Katoa. Maybe you can just go with Liero instead. I mean, look, there's no guarantee that Liero also is safe for minutes, but at least Liero is a little bit cheaper. I think for me, I would just about lean Niokora over Katoa. I think Niokora is probably, his position is much more secure based on what I've heard from, the likes of Anton, but also just with the Storm kind of lineup makeup. I think Niokora is a little bit safer. So I'd probably say I'd just slightly edge him over Katoa. The benefit of Katoa is that he's got that upside. So to answer, whose question was it? Ingsentia saying, why is Katoa so much higher owned than Liero? Partially, he's a much more well-known person, I guess, for Supercoach, because Katoa's had a good Supercoach season. I think it was 2020 from memory. Liero has been more of a steady Eddie coming off the bench most seasons, so he's not really been Supercoach relevant. A couple of people actually saying that Sims is likely to take Liero starting spots. That's from Below Par and from Ryan Lawrence. Ryan saying this opinion coming from a Storm supporter. So this is actually something I didn't really consider, that Sims is coming back in round 2. That maybe gives me enough doubt that maybe I wouldn't start with Liero. Maybe instead what I would do is start with like a Niokora, maybe a Egan Butcher. Jaden, to answer your question, thoughts on Egan Butcher. If you rewind 3 minutes, I gave quite a long breakdown of Egan Butcher, but ultimately I think he's good, pretty good. So yeah, maybe there's enough doubt to not go with Liero. And maybe at that point you do say, maybe you just go to a cheaper person like a Jackson Ford, or maybe if you just want to have a bit more fun with a short-term cash cow, maybe someone like a Bryce Cartwright, for example. So I think there's a few mid-ranges here that you can consider, and I think if in doubt, maybe just, where possible, go for the more expensive one. You can always have that ability to trade down, so that's always a way of maybe protecting yourself, because it's harder to find money to upgrade someone than it is to downgrade someone at the end of the day. I've got Hosking on this list here, but he wasn't named in the entire 17 for Panthers, so it looks like Garner has won that spot. Again, didn't look great in the World Cup Challenge. Round 3 bye. I think there's enough other mid-range second row forward options now that I'm happy to kind of antipod Garner for the time being. Let's see how he plays, and then at that we can make a decision to trade to him if we need to. But I think there's enough alternatives that I'm fine to not go with Garner to start off with. Other questions around some of these midi second row forwards. Yeah, so Jared says, do you just cash up in 2 to 3 second rowers and downgrade the worst performer down to the best performing midi? Yeah, 100% that's a decent strategy. Like Isaac, for example, is saying it looks like he's thinking about a second row forward setup of Murray, Carrigan, Fafita, Liero, Hopgood, and Sean Bloor. I didn't actually talk too much about Sean Bloor. I mentioned in my Cheapy video, I think it's a bit of a risk. It sounds like the comments around Bateman is that he's not too far away. It sounds like the Tigers are just being very, very safe with Bateman, but it sounds like he's not too far away is kind of the summary I took away from some of the comments I saw from both Tim Sheens online, but also from a few accounts on Twitter. So maybe it seems as though Sean Bloor is kind of maybe just taking or holding Bateman's spot for now. So I think there's enough doubt where maybe as soon as Bateman comes back, Sean Bloor comes out of the team, or sorry, maybe goes to the bench. That kind of already caps his price growth. So for me, Bloor's I'm not super keen on. I think there's enough other cheapy options. Like Ryan, for example, you're saying Sean Bloor or Matt Dury. I'd personally go with Matt Dury. I think he's much more safer long term. I believe he should be getting first crack at that right edge spot for Parramatta. So for me, Dury, actually, I think out of that 50-50. But yeah, so Jared, just to go back to your question, definitely a strategy, I think, to go heavy in the second or forward and trade down to, the best performing midi, or maybe even to someone like a Josh Schuster. If, say, for example, you're not starting with Nicho Hynes because he's out for round 1. If you go to Sam Walker, there's about a 250k price gap there. If you start with like a Carrigan, Fafita, Murray, and you find that, let's say hypothetically, Eli Katoa comes out absolutely killing it and he's the must-own second row forward. Let's say Fifita's underperforming. Fifita down to Katoa gives you 200 something K. That's your gap then from Sam Walker to Nicho Hynes. Job done. I think it's definitely a strategy where you can pump in, especially in the second row forward where it's a more safe position. So if you go heavy on the guns, there's a good guarantee that you'll get probably some decent points. It's not quite this case with center wing where it's a bit more volatile. So definitely think it's a good strategy. At the moment, my setup at the moment, I believe, is one gun in Fifita, 2 middies. I think at the moment I had Katoa and I had Niokora. And then I think my bench had Hopgood, Dury and Jacob Preston. So again, it's not quite as heavy, but it gives me some optionality where like I can switch between the mid-ranges, or maybe I can go one of the mid-ranges down to a Schuster, frees up some money as well that way. So yeah, that's kind of, I think, decent strategy. That's probably enough maybe on the mid-range second row forward. Kelma Tuolangi haven't really considered too much because of that early buy in round 2. Faitala Mariner, again, minutes probably look a little bit better now for Bulldogs forwards, given unfortunately what's happened with Luke Thompson. So I have to preface this as well. When I recorded the Cheapy video, it was before we got the news about Luke Thompson. So while I was editing it, I saw the tweet from Phil Gould saying he's out for 6 months. So I overlaid a piece of text saying that, I basically said in the video that I'd only really go Franklin Pele if we knew that Thompson is out long term, and like a dime, that's what we found out. So long story short, I like Franklin Pele as well. But Faitala Mariner could be an option too, but I'm happy to, I think there's enough doubt, he's coming back from injuries, etc., that I would probably just take a chance with another option. Like I'd probably go like 10k more to say an Egan Butcher, for example. Cool. Maybe I think what's worthwhile going on to is the Nicho Hynes question. I kind of touched on it in that last little bit there, but it'd be good just to quickly touch on Nicho. So when I put this slide together, it was actually yesterday. So this is when NRL Physio mentioned that he thought there could be a multi-week absence for Nicho Hynes. It sounds now more like a case where he was battling to be fit for round 1, but just kind of didn't make the cut. So the Sharks are being very safe with him, understandably. And so now they're looking at bringing him back for round 2, kind of what it sounds like. So it's a bit more risky what it seemed today than yesterday to not go with Nicho Hynes. Yesterday, I was very much on the opinion of if he's out for more than 2 weeks, 100% I'm not starting with him because he's just way too expensive to be holding on your bench. Then he's got to buy in round 6 as well. You'd be missing quite a few games. So for me, he wasn't a hold. With only potentially being out for 1 week, it does open the question of, do you just save the trade, park him on your halfback bench, and then just bring him back in straight away for round 2 against Parramatta? I'm actually leaning to still not starting with Nicho Hynes. For me, there's a couple of reasons. There's a couple of reasons why. So I've mentioned some of my thoughts there. Where, given the calf strain, Nigel, there's not a very clear timeline, I guess, on his return. I'm 100% going to be, touching base with NRL Physio, and then seeing what the kind of his prognosis is on Nicho Hynes' return. Because I don't believe Nicho Hynes historically has had issues with calf strain in particular. It's a bit different to someone like Schuster, where Schuster has had historically issues with calf strains, not quite the same for Nicho Hynes. So if it's just a one-off, kind of the first time he's had this, probably makes him coming back a little bit easier. I think having trade boosts also helps things out. I know we shouldn't be boosting for the sake of boosting, but I imagine a lot of people are going to be boosting in rounds 3, 4 when a lot of prices start to change. I'm kind of imagining in my head, if I started with Sam Walker and I've got the Dolphins round 1 where he's goal kicking, maybe he goes out and scores like 90 something. Then he's got the Warriors, maybe he goes 75. Then he's got Rabbitohs, let's say he goes 60, 65. He's probably going to rise up in price. And then in round 4, he's got the bye. At that point, round 4 is probably the first week I think that you're going to look to captain Nicho Hynes, in my opinion, because I think rounds 1 and 2, Tedesco looks like a very clear option for a captaincy. Round 2, you've got Bulldogs at home. If you have Harry Grant, maybe he's a captain. I can't remember who Nathan Cleary has in round 2. It might be the Rabbitohs. I think it might be Broncos Rabbitohs. But I think when I looked at the layout, I don't think that Hynes was really going to be captained until maybe round 4. So if Sam Walker's out in round 4, maybe he's made a little bit of money. Hynes won't actually have changed price by round 4. Just keep that in mind, because if he's out for round 1, his price won't change until round 5 now. So you're going to have to get up to 900k. Sam Walker, I think, is currently 620. Let's say he goes up to 670. You're going to need to make 230k to get up to Nicho Hynes. If you are able to boost, let's say you've got a system where you've got Sam Walker, and you've used Nicho Hynes' money to pump into a gun second row forward, even to say Fafita, let's say it's Fafita, because I know Fafita has a bye in round 5 and he's got the Cowboys in round 4, so it's a tough matchup. And you think, Hynes looking good, I need to get him in because he's going to be heavily captained in round 4. Boost for Hynes doesn't sound like a bad way to use a boost. So you boost Fafita out for a mid-range second row forward that's doing well, maybe a Schuster, that's 400, maybe that's 200k automatically. Sam Walker up to Nicho Hynes, and then you can use your boost trade as well to facilitate maybe getting in another cheapie that you overlooked. If you're getting someone who's you're going to captain, you're getting 2 players that are going to go up in price, and you're taking out someone who's got the Cowboys with a bye in round 5, and then you're taking out Sam Walker who's got a bye that week, to me that doesn't sound like a bad way to use a boost. So I'm kind of leaning to not starting with Nicho Hynes for that reason, even if he's back in round 2. Because I think Sam Walker against the Dolphins in round 1 looks very appealing. Now, obviously, there's a big question as well about, you don't even have to go Sam Walker. You can go a 5'8", because with Isaiah Katoa now being named, and it does seem like Katoa is going to be more of a medium to long-term pick by Wayne Bennett. It's not just to start with him and then we'll go back to Milford when Milford's back up to scratch. Doesn't quite sound like that based on the comments that I read. So there's definitely a case where you start with Munster instead. Maybe you start with Dylan Brown. Maybe you go double up with Dewey Matt Burton. That is something that you can think about. I quite like Sam Walker though, just because you've got that Dolphins round 1 game, Warriors round 2 at home, and he's got that bye in round 4, so it feels very neat to then use him to trade out to Nicho Hynes. I know it's a silly reason why, but with Munster, I believe round 4 for the Storm is actually quite a good game. I'm just going to quickly check this up. So basically what I'm saying is that if Munster's got a good game in round 4, are you really going to want to trade him back out for Nicho Hynes when you know Munster himself has got a good fixture? So that's kind of what I've been thinking about. Whereas Sam Walker in round 4, you know he's not playing, so it feels much easier just to be able to trade him out. So round 4, Melbourne have West Tigers at home. So that's the thing. So because I feel like with Munster, yes, Parramatta round 1, Bulldogs, Titans, West Tigers 2, 3, 4, great matchups. I struggle to see when in each of those weeks you'd want to trade for Hynes. So you just have to be willing to make a very difficult decision, I guess, at that point. So that is something that you could do, maybe opt for a 5'8", but yeah, I like starting with Sam Walker. And I think, Moz, I can see your question as well about, do you hold the cash or do you spend it? So like, do you just go Sam Walker and save 200 something K in your cap, or do you use that and spend that money? I'd be okay spending that money to try to capitalize on the first couple of weeks. And then you can use a boost to maybe kind of reallocate your funds at that point. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about with Nicho Hynes, and maybe not starting with him. So, because for example, I did a quick draft where I took out Nicho Hynes, and all of a sudden, my front row forward had Ruben Cotter. Another draft had Cam Murray and Fafita. I was like, holy moly, you can do so much good stuff with this money. So yeah, definitely something that's worthwhile to think about. Few people asking some halfback questions. So Tums is saying, talking too much. He says it's clearly not a must-have with Hynes out though. Oh yeah, so the reason I didn't include Cleary on this table here is because I think you just start with Cleary now. For me, it feels very easy to just start with Cleary. I know he's got the bye in round 3. I think if Nicho Hynes hadn't been injured, there would have been a case to say start with Sam Walker and Nicho Hynes, and then do the same strategy with Sam Walker to Hynes, but just swap in Cleary instead of Hynes. But I feel now with Hynes not being there, like for me, Cleary is a genuine captain option in round 1, 2. Broncos at home. He absolutely towered up the Broncos last season. I think he scored like 150. That was the week before everyone started buying him. It feels very difficult not starting with Cleary. I honestly think Cleary is undervalued as well. So yeah, that's kind of why I think Cleary for me is just default. Incentive says, I refuse to start the season with an injured player, no matter who it is. That's fair enough. And I think especially Hynes at 900k, I think there's an alternative there in Walker. Sorry, it's actually 620k. I think I mentioned he was 670. So yeah, you'll need to free up 270k to get back up to Hynes. So you'll have to have a bit of a plan, I think, of a gun that you're willing to sacrifice to make up that money. So maybe if you hate having Fafita because of the inconsistency, but maybe you just force him in, try hope that you catch some upside. And if you don't, just trade him out in round 4 to a cheaper second row forward, to maybe Schuster, that's your ticket from Walker to Hynes. So maybe that's a way that you can work that around. Yep, Joshua basically says similar thing to me. Jared says, any love for Moses? The reason I didn't include Moses in this list is I just think the Parramatta draw is a bit tough, when I think you can instead capitalize on maybe someone like Sam Walker with a better opening kind of 3-4 games, especially when you're looking to use that half as a placeholder, if you're looking at them as a placeholder for Nicho Hynes. Like Parramatta, they've got Melbourne at home, Sharks at home, Manly away, and then Penrith at home. So it's a bit of a tough run. If you go back to my halfback video, I did some analysis on Moses' averages against the top 8 and bottom 8. He's definitely much worse against the top 8. So I think there's a chance that he goes down a bit in price or maybe underperforms. Granted, look, he looked really good actually in the second trial. So I think he's an option, maybe a nice pod option. For me though, I feel like Sam Walker's just kind of staring me in the face. Goal kicking against the goal kicking against the Dolphins round 1. Yeah, I don't know. Matt says 4 weeks is a long time in Supercoach, boys. Absolutely it is. It could, Nicho Hynes in rounds 2 and 3 could easily go 100, and we would just be thinking, why the hell did we just not start with him? But anyway, that's the risk that we take. Steezer says, having a cheapy second 5'8" and halfback is worrying me. Yeah, so I think this is probably the situation if people have got, say, the Katoa and Tanner Boyd combo. Like, I'm not currently on Tanner Boyd. I mentioned it in my cheapies video as well. I just think for me, the potential, like, I think the Titans will be improved attack-wise, and he's goal kicking, which is really helpful. First 2 games are really nice. I think it's the West Tigers, and then I think it's the Dragons. Then he runs into Melbourne, Cowboys, and then the bye. For me, it's just the fact that in round 5, he's got that bye, and the 2 games preceding that are tough. So I feel like, because I'll quickly actually just maybe mention this slide very quickly, and then we'll go back to the Nicho Hynes discussion. This is a slide that I had done from last year's round 1 preview. It's just to be conscious of with price changes, especially at the beginning of the season. The first round of the 3-round rolling average that's used to calculate new break-evens and price increases, that first round is the least impactful. So if you've got a player that goes 100, then 50-50, even though the total points is 200, but if that player goes 50-50, 100, the player who got the 100 in round 3 is going to go up more in price because that 100 is in their rolling average for longer. So that's something that's worth thinking about as well. So when I was thinking about it with Tanner Boyd, I was like, yes, rounds 1 and 2 are good, but if he gets a poor score against Melbourne, poor score against Cowboys, and then a bye, all of a sudden that price growth might just deplete. And then all of a sudden by then you might be thinking, I need to get Nicho Hynes or something. So for me, I think there's enough cheaper options that I can kind of navigate around with, like Harry Grant, Brandon Smith, Sam Walker, Nathan Cleary. I think there's enough options there where I think I can not need Tanner Boyd to start with. And if he looks really good, look, round 6, if it seems as though he's due a massive price rise after his bye, I'll jump on him then, I think. So I know I'm saying a lot of wait and watch. I'll jump on this guy, but yeah, hopefully you guys find some insight into my kind of thinking and how I'm thinking about it, with especially with someone like Tanner Boyd as well. So for example, George is saying Ponga and Tanner Boyd with 36k, or Sam Walker and Katoa with 111k. I would actually just take Sam Walker and Katoa, in my opinion, and just bank that 111k. Incentia says Dewey could be a good option to get to Nicho. Hold him for Titans, Knights, and Bulldogs, and then because Dewey's got a bye also in round 7, I believe. So yeah, Dewey would have Titans, Knights, Bulldogs. Trade him out before he runs into the Storm, Broncos at Suncorp, Parramatta, Manly, and the Panthers. Yeah, look, that's an option as well. For me, Katoa enables a lot, given that he's dual listed, halfback 5'8". So I think it kind of means that these strategies are a bit more achievable. So again, this is kind of the stuff that's making me think I can avoid not starting with Nicho for round 1. Oliver says, can you allow messages on Twitter so you can talk to us about our teams? I'm pretty sure that's people are able to message me on Twitter. I might just have to double check my settings, but I'm pretty sure I don't have a lock on that. So let me look into that. Just on the rating teams as well. I know I did that rating teams video, and I really wish I could look at everyone's teams, but it is difficult, especially now with the content I'm planning with doing a biplanning video tomorrow and then another team video. It's going to be quite difficult to try to look at teams, I think, in full before lockout. I mean, feel free to send them through and I'll try to have a look at it. But hopefully enough of my thoughts on the players will kind of help you out, at least anyway, just with your teams. But look, I do appreciate people sending them. I know, I take it as a positive that you guys are willing to take my opinion. But yes, apologies if I can't get to everyone. There is a lot of people who are reaching out. Okay, so that's probably enough around the Nicho Hynes question. So just going to have a quick look at some of the other stuff that I had. Front row forward, I think, actually, let's talk about front row forward, because I know this slide's on cheapies, but there's been a few questions I've seen in the last kind of 45 minutes on Jake Trbojevic, and thoughts on him. Yeah, because if you look at the front row forward position, that 500k range, there's really nothing to go for apart from him. I do think he's going to be a decent option. The fact that he's got dual is very helpful. If you look at the Manly bench, it looks very small as well. It's another reason why I'm keen on Sean Kepi as well, just as a kind of a bench front row forward. Like, I'm looking at their bench, they've got KO Weeks, Ben Trbojevic, Ethan Bullimore, and Josh Alloway. Like, Bullimore and Alloway will play in the middle, but that's it. Like, KO Weeks is a utility. I think he played fullback for Manly in the trials. Ben Trbojevic is more of a centre / a second row forward. Like, for me, I see potentially big minutes in the middle, especially for Jake Trbojevic. You know, he's a club veteran, he's a leader. He can definitely be looking to play like that kind of origin style role where he's just literally just meat and potatoes. He might get back up to that kind of 60-65 average, and I believe he's priced pretty cheaply as well. Well, he's in the 500Ks, which is in the current market like something like a 50. Is it even a 50-ish average? Yeah, his average last year was 50. I could see him getting up to 60. If he does get those additional minutes playing especially if he just plays straight up in the middle. So he's an option. I'm happy to not start with him for now. I think there's enough value with, like, say, Christian Welch, mid 400s. Oitkamanu I think is good. Sean Kepi I think will be decent for his price at 274k. I definitely see some value in him, like maybe 15 to 20 points value on Kepi. We've got Franklin Pele, maybe it looks like now, with Luke Thompson being out for 6 months. So, like, already I'm starting to see, like, I'm happy with a cheap front row forward. Like, I don't feel like I need to spend up to someone like a Jake Trbojevic. To me, it kind of feels like I'm very comfortable with either going those cheapies, or I then upgrade one of them to someone like Ruben Cotter or Joe Tarpany. Like, for example, I've seen a few questions from, I think Isaac mentioned Joe Tarpany playing at prop. Tarpany's always an option. I'm starting to feel okay with not going with Tarpany to begin the year. Scares the hell out of me though still, because he looked awesome in the trials. But I'm happy to take Cotter, I think, for a little bit cheaper. I think Cotter is going to be your kind of solid 65 average guy. I think there was a lot of questions as well earlier about To'o versus Cotter. Now this actually got me thinking, because I'll mention it in the buy planning video tomorrow, but the Cowboys are unreal for buy coverage, at least for the first 15 weeks. Like, their draw is super good, and they don't play their first buy until, I think, round 15. So someone like Cotter, you can just hold all the way until State of Origin round 13. To'o is similar, but he has a buy in round 3. So I think if you assume that they're both in full health, To'o is going to play one less game than Cotter before maybe you think about trading out these guys. So can To'o outscore Cotter with that one game less? I think To'o might average 65. I think Cotter might average about 65. So if I think about it that way, I would actually go Cotter when I think about the fact that you've got that extra game. And it looks, he was mentioning some chat about him potentially playing, he wants to play 80 minutes. I don't think that's quite going to happen. But yeah, I actually think in that To'o versus Cotter question, I think I'm actually leaning towards Cotter. And especially now with Taruva, I think, named on the wing, it feels easier to go without To'o if you're not going with, if you're kind of 50-50 on him anyway. You're getting into that Panthers backline with a cheapie at 275k. You don't have to get To'o. I think To'o is going to be great. But yeah, think about it now. I think if you look at a longer term stretch of games, Cotter is probably going to be slightly better. Seeing a lot of questions coming in now as well about Davey Moale or Franklin Pele. So what I mentioned in the Cheapy video was that Moale is probably safer because he was already going to be part of the bench makeup for the Rabbitohs. Pele, there was some chat before that he wasn't going to be in the 17. I just wonder if his inclusion in the 17 was only because now there's a long-term injury to Luke Thompson. So for me, I feel like Moale's position in the team is more safe than Pele. But I think now that we know that Luke Thompson's injury is long-term, Pele and Moale, I don't see too much difference in their minutes. Because both teams have got issues in the middle forwards. So I think both of them are going to be okay for minutes. So the way I said it in the video was, I think Moali's probably just going to be longer term safer because we already knew he was going to be a bench forward for the Rabbitohs. Pele kind of just, I think it seems to have happened because of this Luke Thompson injury. If you need to save 20k, then just go Pele. If you feel like you don't need to save that 20k, I would just go Moali. I honestly think it's very similar between the two. I can see myself going with Pele though, just for the fact that he's cheaper. I think the fact that he's cheaper means he's less reliant on minutes, and then he can kind of he'll be able to make more money, I think, as well. So yeah, hopefully a few people that answers your questions around Pele versus Moali. If Pele impresses, does he get the start? Yeah, look, that's potentially an option as well. So, I mean, Ryan Sutton is maybe someone I haven't really thought about. He's come now into the starting team. I don't, to be honest, now looking at it, I think they brought Ryan Sutton over from the Raiders for that experience. Max King and Ryan Sutton probably feels like they're going to be the two starting front row forwards. But yeah, definitely some minutes available, I think, with those with that minutes rotation now, with a bit of a lack of middle forwards for the Bulldogs. Sorry, another cheapy centre wing I'll quickly mention was Corey Allen, because I know a couple of people messaged me as well about him. Wouldn't go there. It looks like Joey Mine is just being played safe. Facial injury, I think he'll be back round 2, and I think Corey Allen drops out straight away. Let's see, there's a few other questions. So I think we're about 48 minutes, so I think we'll go for the full hour. So what I'll do is I don't really think I have too many more planned sections. I'll go into captaincy as well a little bit, and then I'll quickly go into my team as well. Samuel says Daly Cherry Evans to replace Nicho. I'm not too keen, to be honest. I think the buy round 2 just means not goal kicking. I'd rather just go with Sam Walker at least as well. In that scenario, if you're going to use that person to trade to Nicho. So Steezer has an interesting point. He says, I think people are overthinking Taruva. Do we not remember Charlie Staines at the Panthers? Yeah, I guess we haven't seen a lot of Taruva. I mean, we kind of had an indication that Staines didn't have any like base stats to speak of. Taruva might not be in the same boat. Let me have a look at, because he only played okay, so I'm looking at 2 games that Taruva played last season for the Panthers. 1 game on the wing, 2 games on the wing where he played 80 minutes, a base of 35 and a base of 25. Like, I already think that's better than whatever Charlie Staines was getting. Charlie Staines was getting like 10 base points, like really not much. So I think Taruva's probably got a higher floor. Like, if you average those 2 games, base average of 30, a base average of 30 is quite good. So I think if you chuck in an attacking, let's say he gets a score as a try every 3 weeks, so that's 6 points average. Maybe he gets 36 average a week. I think that's being a bit kind. So I think he's probably got a little bit better than that. I think he's a better prospect than Charlie Staines is, frankly. Mod says he's running with Pele over Kepi could get you a Miller to Mulatalo To'o. That's how you got to think about it. Yeah, exactly. I think about it in combinations as well. Like going with Kepi, that's 70k, 60k more than Pele. What does that enable you elsewhere in the team? So yeah, definitely be thinking about that. Ian says Sonny Luke versus Tanner Boyd at hooker. If you're thinking about one of those two, I'd probably just go Tanner Boyd. His buy is a little bit later than Sonny Luke. We haven't seen Sonny Luke yet in the trials as well, so there's no idea about the minutes. And then Tanner Boyd's goal kicking too. So I think there's enough factors there where I think I'd just lean with Tanner Boyd to start with. And as I always say, you can always trade down to Sonny Luke. Duncan says, have you spoken about Braden Williami? I have, yes. So I'll when the stream's over, I'll add timestamps back when I talk about centering cheapies. But yeah, I spent some time talking about him as well. What do you think about Welch, his minutes and his average? I think Welch is going to have to step up now, just with the issues with the Storm middles being named captain. I see him being 50-55 minutes comfortably. And in that time, I think he can average about kind of 60, maybe 55 to 60, early 60s. Because especially if he's offloading too. Like for me, Welch is I'm very comfortable now in Welch, and I don't really have any concerns about him issues with injuries and stuff as well. Thoughts on Meaney if you haven't spoken about him? Yeah, look, Meaney I'm not super keen on. Yes, he's goal kicking. He's got a decent draw. I mean, he's not a bad option. I've just been locked into Toto though. I think he just represents much better value. I think he's a little bit cheaper than Meaney. because Meany feels very safe, but maybe doesn't quite have a ceiling that you would hope for maybe if you're paying that much for a center wing. Cool. Okay, I think what I'll do is I'll quickly get onto the captaincy discussion for this week. Probably, to be honest, I think it's going to be fairly straightforward for most people this week. So I think I've kind of outlined the prime candidates, I think, for this week. And yeah, so just on vice captaincy, it's probably worth mentioning with buys. So it's going to be a bit easier to probably loop this season because buy players that you have in your team, they don't lock out until the start of the last game each week. So you've generally got a loop option most weeks now, I think, moving forward. Except this week, for example, I'm looking at, who said it? Tool Pro says he doesn't have a Dragons player to loop. I also don't have a Dragons player to loop. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be looping this week. I think if for the first game of the week, it'd probably be someone like Cam Munster or maybe Harry Grant. What I've tried to do as well is I've just put in the bottom row, which is the average conceded to that position. So it just shows where that team ranked in terms of conceding points to that spot. So the lower the number, so i.e. first, is better. So someone like Adam Dewey, for example, Titans were the worst at conceding points to opposition 5/8. So think about it that way. So I don't think a lot of people are going to be captaining or vice captaining someone in that first game. It's a bit of a tough matchup to call between the Storm and the Eels. But I've added Munster here because if you do go Munster, for example, I know a lot of people are thinking about Munster as a replacement for Hynes instead of, say, Sam Walker, then maybe he's an option, big game player. For me, though, I'm probably going to just vice captain Cleary, I think. I think it's the Friday game that the Panthers play the Broncos, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it's the Friday 8 o'clock game. Warriors Knights is not really... It's a bit hard to pick, I think, someone to be a captain or vice captain. But Panthers against the Broncos at Bluebet. For me, Cleary feels a very comfortable, safe vice captain. Alternative, I think that was Tom Trbojevic. Saturday, 3 o'clock. What's the weather like in Sydney on Saturday? I'm going to have to quickly Google this because if it's a sunny day in Brookvale... at the moment it's saying partly cloudy, so it's not too bad. And it's nice and cool, about 24 degrees, partly cloudy, 59% humidity, 19 kilometers of wind. Yeah, it's not a bad condition for Tom Trbojevic. So I think, for me, I'd be umming and ahhing, I think, between Turbo and Cleary as vice captain. I think I'll end up going Cleary because I think my captain is going to be Tedesco, so you can't vice captain and captain a fullback. So maybe Turbo is a pod captain shout. But yeah, no, I think I'm going to be sticking with Cleary vice. Maybe Turbo is a pod captain, but I think it's going to be Tedesco captain. We're going to repeat what we did last year. Captaining Tedesco round 1. I think he scored us a massive 32 points last season in round 1, which was against the Knights, which was not fun, especially as a Roosters fan. I was hoping for a big game. Yep, 32 points against me. Oh, Siri, sorry. Tedesco scored 32 points against the Knights at the SCG in round 1 last season. Away to the Dolphins. Hopefully Teddy performs big. Alternatively, in the Roosters, it'd be Sam Walker with goal kicking. I have a feeling though Sam Walker's goal kicking, he'll be put to the test because I think a lot of the tries are just going to go down the edges. And I think he's going to have to kick a lot of goals from out wide. I say all of this and the Dolphins could just come out and absolutely embarrass us who've been saying that they're going to get hammered this week. I don't know if it'll be a hammering. If I had to guess the score, something like 30-6, so maybe 5 tries versus 1. I guess that's a bit of a hammering. And Matt says, Teddy started worse than Turbo last year though. Yeah, that is a good question, but for me, Teddy sees as a captain, and I think he will be the most highly owned or most highly captained player. Actually, I can find this out for you guys. Let me, where can I do this? Let me just quickly go. Yeah, I'll give you a sneak peek on the players in a second. Round 1, coach's choice. That's what we want. All coaches. So, most captained. Okay, so at the moment, Cleary is the most captained at 34%, but I think a lot of this is just people who haven't maybe changed their teams yet. Teddy's at 15%. I expect that to go higher. So for me, Teddy will be the most captain. So I feel that it's a bit scary, especially round 1. You don't want to antipod Teddy away to the Dolphins and then he gets like 100 and you've gone, I don't know, Turbo. Turbo goes fine, but he gets 70. You're still going to be like, it's 30 points, kicking myself. So for me, I'm going to go more safe and go Tedesco, I think, as captain. But yeah, very interesting looking at some of these numbers here. Someone's mentioned Val Holmes as a cheeky captain. It's hard to get a read on the Raiders. Like, they can just turn up, even if they're not looking good. So I know he's goal kicking, but for me, Val doesn't quite feel like a captaincy option this week, just with the matchup. I know that's a home game, but for me, it still feels like a Roosters player. Roosters player or Cleary is kind of how I'm thinking about it at this point. So, yeah, I'm probably not going to overthink about it too much. So yeah, for me, it will probably be Teddy captain. Other option is maybe Adam Doueihi against the Titans. Goal kicking, they conceded a lot of points to 5/8 last year. But yeah, for me, Teddy. I think it's going to be Teddy. I think you make a decent point, Matt, though, as well, about that the Dolphins seem like they will be an annoying team where they hang in there the whole time but play a crap attack. Yes, could be the case where they kind of just turn the game into a scrap. But hopefully the Roosters click. No Joey Manu, to be honest, just means that Teddy, Sam Walker are going to get more hands on the ball. And like without Manu in particular, I think Teddy's going to command more ball. I think he's just going to be much more involved as well. So for me, it feels very straightforward. Teddy, captain, I think. Right, we have about 58 minutes. So I'll quickly just go through my team currently, some of my thoughts as well. But I will do an updated team video, I think, tomorrow as well. So here is the team currently as it stands. No change in the hookers. I don't see myself going off Harry Grant and Brandon Smith. Slight change in my props where I've gone Pele in for David Mawali, but it's still running Welch Oitokamanu with Kepi and Pele. Still got Hopgood as third to RF. I've got Fafita and Niokora. I've got on the bench Preston, Matt Drury and Trent Liero. So with Jake Preston as well, the reason I've got him, I'm okay with him, is Wacko Whispers posted last week that he was already, he had mentioned, or he had tweeted that Preston was going to make his debut, and this was prior to any Luke Thompson issue. So it kind of makes me think that he was already going to be an option. So I think at bottom dollar, it's fine to go with him. I've got enough cash where I could upgrade to someone like Jackson Ford instead. So I'm not completely locked into Preston. I think Dewey is probably going to be pretty locked in for me. I think Niokora, Hopgood as well. Fafita could become Murray still. Trent Liero, based on what some people were saying in the chat about Sims coming back, he could turn into someone else as well, like maybe Katoa, for example. But to be honest, what I would probably do, most likely, is with the money I've got, I would probably just turn him into someone like Cam Murray. Or I would upgrade one of my front row forwards to someone like Cotter. So, like, I can afford Murray in for Trent Liero with the current draft. I could maybe go Tarpany instead. That is maybe worth thinking about, because then I can kind of rotate Kepi and Tarpany between front row forward, second row forward. So it adds a bit of flexibility there as well. But most likely what I would end up doing if I did this was probably going Cam Murray. Again, I mentioned in the buy planning video, Rabbitohs' first team buy is not until I think around... Well, they don't have a buy before round 13. So Cam Murray could be just a solid hold for you all the way up until State of Origin, which I like. So, like if I did that, then all of a sudden, Hopgood, Dury and Preston on my bench. Still running pretty cheap in the front row forward, but I'm kind of just okay with it. Instead of Murray, I could go Cotter. Murray feels a little bit nicer though than Cotter, but that's still probably a 50-50. Cleary, Sam Walker for me, I think feels locked. I don't think I'll be changing off that after all what I said about Nicho Hynes as well. So I think I'm pretty locked into that. I think I'm also locked into Dewey Katoa. For me, that feels pretty comfortable. I think I'm locked into Val Holmes. I think I'm almost locked in with To'o. Not 100%, but I think I will start with him. And then Taruva, Alamotti, Khan Pereira and Warbrick all locked in for me. Isaac Thompson is still up for debate. And Teddy and Turbo for me are pretty locked in as well. So I think majority of the team is pretty set. There's really a few 50-50 decisions left. Like it's probably, like Isaac Thompson or Nickel Klukstad. Is it, do I use them? And then it's to be honest, really my main decisions I think left are, do I go Brian To'o? Do I maybe think about reducing my number of Panthers? Do I go with someone else? Do I go Isaac Thompson, or do I maybe turn him into Nickel Klukstad? And then with that Hynes money, do I either just leave it in the bank, or do I use it to upgrade one of my tourists to someone like Cam Murray, or do I instead use it to upgrade let's say, for example, hypothetically what I did, oh, not captain. So this is something I could also do. Let's say instead of Preston, let's say if I just went with, let's say I just went with Cheapy in my second row forward spot instead. Oh. Let's say here in front row forward I get Cotter, because I think Cotter will be good. I still got 332k. So maybe at that point then I run with someone like maybe I go back to Preston, maybe it's something like Jackson Ford. So then obviously my second row forward bench makeup is a little bit different. I'd be running Hopgood then as my third second row forward, but I'd have a much stronger front row forward depth. You know, Welch and Cotter looks much better. I wouldn't play Cheapy. I'd probably play. Comes a question of then, do I play Khan Pereira or do I play Oich Commander? I'd probably just play Oich Commander to be safe. And it could be something like that. Like this is probably a much more balanced squad in terms of upgrading one of the front row forward. Benny G says Preston over Ford. I think that's fair enough. You can just take the money saving. But these are the few kind of smaller decisions that I've got left in the team. But to be honest, I don't think there's a lot whole left for me to decide. So a few things I'll kind of change up. But I think overall, most of that team is pretty locked in. So if I don't feel any different, I might not do a final team video. If I feel like something's wildly different, I'll probably still do a team video anyway. But hopefully I've just got a bit more clarity of thought. Maybe I'll listen to a few other podcasters. I'll have a chat with a few people as well. But yeah, I think majority of the team is fairly settled. Tom says, is Toto playing on the left or right? We still don't quite know yet. The talk was that he was going to move to the left. If you look at the numbers in the team list, Taruva's on the left, but I don't think that really informs anything. I think we just kind of have to see what happens this week. That's another thing as well I should mention, is that with the rolling lockout, you can still make changes during the week. So, and it doesn't cost you trades. So like if we get on Friday team list, we find out that Toto's playing on the right, maybe I get cold feet, and then I don't think that the Rabbitohs are playing. Let's say for example, so the only games that happen before the Panthers is Eel Storm, Warriors, Knights. So let's say we find out that Toto is playing on the right, and I decide don't want that. I take out Toto. Maybe I go someone else, like maybe who plays after that I could go for. Murray Taulagi from the Cowboys, maybe. Maybe Mulatalo from the Sharks, maybe Tupou from the Roosters, maybe Tommy Talau. Like maybe I could just decide to go a little bit cheaper, and then maybe I'll look to upgrade one of my second forwards to Cam Murray. You can kind of do that stuff this week with the rolling lockout. But yeah, a few things that I think that's worth thinking about. SC Playbook is in the house. Hello, killing it, mate. Appreciate it. I'm actually going to wrap up the stream and tune into your podcast. I saw you guys posted it as well, but no, appreciate you joining the chat. Awesome stuff. Going to wrap up the stream soon though, guys. But yeah, if you guys have been enjoying it as well, do give it a thumbs up too. Wolfie says he went Alex Johnson. Yeah, Matt says Meany. The only thing with Meany though, Matt, is that if it's a Friday decision, Storm have already played at that point, so you can't switch to Meany. My first thought was actually to Meany, but then I realized that Storm would have played already, so that's the only issue with that plan. So yeah, just something that you need to think about, I guess, with teams and arrangements of games this week. But guys, I think we'll wrap up the stream there. We've been going on for just over an hour. Hopefully you all found that really useful. It was great to start talking Supercoach again after a TLT. Hopefully you all enjoyed that and my thoughts. Give the stream a like, as I mentioned on the way out. We should be back tomorrow with another team update video, short video as well. I did on buy planning tips as well. Yes, I'll plug my Supercoach group. Thank you, Jerry. So below me during the stream, I've had the league code. So that's for my unlimited group league. So definitely join that. I'll leave an auto join link as well in the description of the stream below. So yeah, get in there. We've already had like hundreds of people join that as well. I'm going to try to think about organizing some prizes this season as well. So definitely stay tuned for that as well. So another plug, subscribe if you want to see more content. Thanks again everyone for joining me this Tuesday night. It's back in the air. TLT is back. NRL is back soon. As Matt says, 2 more sleeps. Can't wait for it. All right, legends, thanks so much for joining with me, and see you all in the next one.